Hey guys, Martin here bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we got the EZA details for Jiren and the bunch of Universe 6 Sub-EZAs. The wiki page hasn't been updated yet, so the updated details aren't on the screen here, but the video is not so much to talk about him and his kit specifically. I already made a video breaking that down, so if you haven't seen what his EZA does, obviously go ahead and check that out. That's the latest video on the channel before this one. But as you can see from the title, kind of the point of this video is to just have a little bit of a chat about what is going on in Dokkan with EZAs lately, because it seems like we have had multiple celebrations, or even in filler celebrations, where we get these EZAs come out and they are either disappointing just in general to the point where the unit is unrunnable, or the unit will be good but only in very, very specific niche situations, and those don't often seem to map onto what is going on in the current meta of the game, right? Like, we've had a lot of discussions recently, we talked about on the episodes of the Slot 1 Super podcast recently, that like you sometimes get the feeling that they don't test these units out in the game to see how well they will perform before they go ahead and release them, because at the time of recording this, I've already seen some screenshots. I think Dokkan World has done a private server showcase for the Jiren EZA, and on a turn where he has like 100% support, because like a 30% and then the 70% from MVP 17, he only has like 300k defense start of turn, which is insane for like an EZA in 2023, given the recent content that we've had release. And that is, I think, the biggest issue, is the EZAs need to be more in line with the level of content that we have at the moment. Because if we take ourselves back to, you know, when EZAs first came out and kind of what the idea behind an EZA was supposed to be, is EZAs to me have always felt like, and you know, we can argue that they didn't exactly market it like this or whatever, but EZAs to me have always been the idea that you take a unit that is no longer usable in the current meta because they're so old, and then you make them usable again. Now, that doesn't mean I expect every single EZA to be like the new best EZA in the game. They are now like, you know, a top 10 TUR. You can take them into any single one of any of the events we currently have, and they'll just absolutely dominate, destroy the stage, never take damage. Like, obviously that's ridiculous, right? But that kind of level of expectation. But the unit should be good. Like, as in, the unit should be runnable. The idea should be that you can put that unit now becomes a viable option on your team. Where if you're building a team, like if we look at Jiren, now obviously I know Jiren is kind of on some weird categories, and you know, we won't even take into account what his passive was before his EZA, but like if you were building a Realm of Gods team, or, well, I mean, Space Traveling Warriors is largely extreme, but let's just take Realm of Gods as an example. If you're building a Realm of Gods team to take on any of the new Red Zone stages, ideally, we would like Jiren to be good enough that you could start building that team, put 5 units on there, not really sure who to put in that 6th slot, but then you can say, oh, well, Jiren got his EZA, he's actually quite good, I'll put him on there. He might not be the best unit on the team, maybe I'll just float him, but, you know, I can get away with running him. But given the calcs that I've seen for him so far, we won't even talk about the AoEs from Fusion Zamasu. He just is not good enough to be run against these other fights. Like, if we take a look at his info here, zoom in a little bit. This is the his EZA details. You know, why is he A, restricted to 2 or more enemies? Again, I don't want to go into loads of detail because we talked about this in my previous video, but he's damage reduction, but only when facing 2 enemies, and then 111% extra attack and defense when there's a Universe Survival Saga or Tournament Participants category enemy. Now, if we think back to all the difficult content that has released, even within like the last year, we got Wicked Bloodline Red Zone for last year's Worldwide Celebration. We got the Red Ribbon Army Red Zone. We got the, obviously the anniversary content with like the anniversary special event and stuff like that. And then, of course, we got the Shadow Dragons event as part of the anniversary. And then we got a new Red Zone, the Dismal Future. There's probably some other like bits here and there that I'm missing. Obviously, JP, where this EZA is coming out, got Omega as the extra stage to the Shadow Dragons event as well. Out of all of those stages, the only unit that this is in any way relevant against is, I guess you fight multiple enemies in, what, Gamma 1 and 2, and then like the Frieza and King Cold, which are not exactly difficult fights, but they're both now, you know, almost a year old. And then the tournament participants, the only one is the Cell, right, because of the Cell games. So this unit is coming out now in October 2023, but basically all of the difficult content that has released this year, he doesn't get his full passive active in any of these events. So why is he designed this way? Now, one thing I've seen a lot of people say when it comes to Jiren especially is that, oh, well, he was a Super Battle Road unit before, so he's just a Super Battle Road unit now. And it's like, is he or was he? Because when he first came out, he's the Universe Survival Saga category leader. So, you know, if you want to run events with a Universe Survival Saga team, this is obviously before we started getting all the buffs. We had the anniversary for the 6th year themed around Reps of Universe 7 and stuff like that. But this guy was the big leader for Universe Survival Saga. He's got a decent chunk of stats for his start of turn. Like, ideally, he should be good in other events. Now, obviously, looking at what he does now, he's going to be very, very good in Super Battle Road, right? Extra damage reduction, he can still stun everybody at the start of the turn, he gets guaranteed crits against them. Like, yeah, he'll be good for Super Battle Road, but the problem is, even if originally he was a unit that only really had a use in Super Battle Road, why would you give him an EZA now in October 2023 that just makes him an even better Super Battle Road unit, when Super Battle Road has barely had any power creep thanks to the crazy evolution of the teams we have now, especially with 200% leads. I mean, I've talked about it many times before, I don't want to go off into that whole tangent here, but like, new Super Battle Road stages come out and you just beat them with no items on the first attempt. Because they're so easy now compared to what they used to be like when some of the no item runs would take multiple attempts. And that's even, we're talking about no items. If you're going into these new Super Battle Road stages and you're using items, because you still get to use 4 different ones, the Super Battle Road is just a joke now in terms of difficulty. So why do we need STR Jiren's EZA to make him a super good Super Battle Road unit? It's just completely unnecessary. So very, very strange. I have no idea why they do this, and I wanted to take a look here. We're not going to go through all the details of every single one, but let's take a look at the EZAs from the worldwide celebration, because I don't want to give Dokkan all the flack. I don't want to say like, oh, you know, they don't ever bring out good EZAs anymore, but even the ones that are really good have their own issues, right? And again, it's not necessarily the issue with the unit, and you know, the unit is bad because of XYZ. It's based again around the climate of the game and the current content. So AGL Zamasu, arguably one of the best EZAs from the worldwide celebration, probably up there for contender for the best EZA TUR at the moment, perhaps. Really, really good. Now, the problem is, he starts off as the base Zamasu, where he gets 140% defense, he gets 40% damage reduction, and then he does raise defense on super. But of course, he released in this meta where we're now getting enemies that drop insane amounts of damage on turn 1. So this guy can still absolutely just get killed in the first turn, which is kind of wild. Now again, as I said previously, I'm not expecting all EZAs that come out, you know, we're now tanking all big boss super attacks for double-digit damage and stuff like that. But this guy is definitely much better poised than some of the other units, right? Because with these hard-hitting content straight away turn 1, he does have 40% damage reduction. I don't think he has type disadvantage in any of those phases right off the bat except for Cell. And then obviously ones like Goku Black, he actually has type advantage in the first phase. The AoEs from Fusion Zamasu will be a bit of an issue, but you know, that's unfortunately the case with like 95% of the units in the game at this point, that those AoEs are going to be really awkward for them. So that is a little bit unfortunate. But this guy, I mean, he still comes out overall with, I would say, a thumbs up rating, right? But then we get onto his counterpart, which is the Tech Gohan, the Tech Trunks. And he is interesting, but his design lends itself, again, with, you know, going back to this point about EZAs often just making units more advanced versions of what they were. This guy has always been a long form content stacking unit. So that's what they made him even better at being. The only problem is he then released in a celebration where none of the content are long form events that give you enough leeway at the very beginning to get your build up going so that he can then look good. If you go into an event that is long and is a bit more forgiving at the start, he can become incredibly good. It's just unfortunately all the difficult content that released in the same celebration as him just does not lend itself to what it is that he does. And of course, let's not forget that, what, 3 of the most difficult events from like the 3 stages of the Dismal Future Red Zone all have int phases. Like Zamasu, was it stage 4 Zamasu and stage 5 Fusion Zamasu start off as being int, so he gets no leeway whatsoever, especially when he's in this form. Which will get absolutely crushed by tough int enemies. And then the Goku Black is STR, and then the final phase is int. So, you know, you'll have gotten to the second phase, but how like stacked up is he actually going to be? And then you're fighting an incredibly hard hitting int enemy. So this guy just feels so unfortunately placed. Like, you make those red zone stages that we got for the worldwide celebration, you make them all slightly longer and change all of those int phases to AGL. And then this guy would have been in such a much better place, which is why it seems so strange, as we say, when it comes to these comments about, like, do they even test the game and stuff. It's like, why did they release his EZA the way it is in a celebration where none of the content works with what his EZA does? Which is very unfortunate. Then we had a bunch of the... oh, actually, we still got the Gohan first before we get onto the Sub-EZAs. Now, Gohan is another one that definitely gets an overall thumbs up. He is definitely very good. His only real liability is when you're above the 70% or less HP and he doesn't have the damage reduction. He obviously can take a decent amount of damage, especially if it's pre-super, so like the AoE and everything. But once he gets a super and greatly raises his defense, and you can drop below the 70% mid-turn and his damage reduction will activate, then he is incredibly good. We got some good Trunks units. I mean, regardless of the EZA, right, the physical sort of Hope LR Trunks is good. So as long as you have a Trunks on the team, you can transform into the Super Saiyan Gohan, and then he has 58% damage reduction all the time. And he is just consistently very, very good. So this guy, definitely good. Isn't in a weird situation with the content, the way it works, aside from, like I say, maybe the AoEs, but that applies to basically everybody. But then we get on to the Sub-EZA. So we've got this STR Trunks, the Tech Future Gohan, AGL Trunks and Mai, and then Physical Kawasu and Zamasu. This guy definitely is better than I originally thought he was. I think my initial showcase, I just got really unlucky. So he was like really unimpressive to me. But now that I've used him a bit more, and obviously used him in the situations where you can really see his full strength, which is when you're on the lower HP, he can be pretty good. Honestly, units that have built-in damage reduction are always going to be very useful now, especially in this meta with like the AoEs and stuff like that. So he's pretty good. Tech Future Gohan is unfortunately not very good at all. He also shares the same name as the LR Future Gohan, who, when we saw his details on paper, we thought could be, you know, majorly or primarily a slot 1 unit, and then this guy would have kind of a home on his team floating in slot 3. But with how hard hitting some of these bosses are straight away, you ideally a lot of the time want to put Future Gohan in slot 2, so this guy doesn't really end up with a home. And of course he suffers from the same issue as the Tech Trunks, where all these difficult fights against int bosses. So very unfortunate. These guys can be pretty good. They can get up to some very good stats. I think overall they are a thumbs up. They're not like crazy good, because obviously these guys are designed for the new content that which they released in, because they're getting this full passive against all of these later difficult stages. Now obviously when we get the next big celebration and we get a whole new set of difficult content, they probably won't age very well for that, because they won't be getting these last parts of their passive. But at least for the celebration their EZA released in, and to buff the teams that we were using in those celebrations, these kind of restrictions I think are fine, because they were good for the celebration they released in, which is cool. And then we have these guys. They're hit and miss. Like, they are, I would say overall they are a thumbs up. I still like to put them on various different team builds. They're one of the few superclass units that does fit really well on Zamasu's team. So they are pretty good overall. I mean, in certain situations against hard-hitting enemies where they don't have type advantage, you kind of are relying on their dodge. But overall, they are generally pretty good. And then, of course, we get onto this guy right here. Now, I have to say that in events where you do get a little bit of a chance for him to build up, maybe you get to the point where he transforms. I've had some turns with this guy where I don't think he's as terrible as maybe everyone initially made out, right? Like he's saying he's the worst EZA of all time, all this kind of stuff. Like when he's transformed into Rosé and he's dropping like 999 million attack stat turns, and you're at like, you know, 700k, 800k defense, that's pretty good. The problem is it takes him a very long time to get to that point, especially if you're not fighting a super class enemy where he's getting a bunch of built-in super attacks additionally. So again, he falls into that pitfall of he can be good in certain content. We just didn't get any of that kind of content released in the same celebration as him, which is just very, very strange. So overall, this guy felt like a massive fumble. And of course, the timing was not great. I think people massively hated on this guy, you know, deservedly to a certain extent, but more so maybe than necessary because the disappointment was still fresh that we didn't get any kind of new Goku Black. So this guy being the first representation of Goku Black in the celebration and then it being underwhelming was definitely very, very disappointing. And then, of course, we got the LR Rosé to kind of end out the worldwide celebration. And I'm all aboard the LR Rosé train. Yeah, he gets, you know, takes tons of damage from the AoEs. He's not built for AoEs. He's not great against Infusion Zamasu. He's definitely not great against Physical Sin. But in any other content, and this is what I was saying when I kind of referenced the Trunks and Mai, if we get another big celebration comes out, let's say the end of the year, last year I know it was special because it was related to the movie, but for New Year's last year, we got a new red zone for like the Red Ribbon Army. If we get a new red zone, you know, within the next couple of months, where all the fights, you know, I mean, maybe one of them will, but where most of the fights don't have AoEs, this guy will still be incredibly dominant in all of those events and will probably only really take big damage from very, very strong physical enemy like super attacks, right? Otherwise, he's going to be very, very good. So his only real downside is not being great at taking AoEs. So this guy, really good, definite thumbs up overall. So when we look at all of the EZAs for the worldwide celebration, we've got what? If we count, we'll count the ones that I would say are overall thumbs up as the win. So we've got 1, then we've got 1 miss, 2, we'll count this guy, so 3, 2 misses, 4 and 2 misses, 5 and 2 misses, 5 and 3 misses, and then 6 and 3 misses. So out of 9 EZAs, 2/3 of them were good for the worldwide celebration. So that is pretty good, but it's just unfortunate that the ones that are bad, they just kind of then, that's it, they're just lost in the shuffle. And this is why I said right at the very beginning, an EZA is supposed to be a thing that takes a unit that you're not using anymore, and then you go, oh, this unit's good now, except it just doesn't apply in the content that we're getting released at the same time. If they dropped, as part of the celebration, a couple of events where you fought really tough superclass bosses that were very long events that didn't hit like an absolute freight train on turn 1, because yeah, we can't really count Vegito Blue or like Trunks from the Divine Wrath and Entrusted Mortal Will, then this guy could be really good. But they didn't release any content like that, so very unfortunate. And then if we take a quick look at some of the other recent EZAs, these guys are about to come out on Global. Now these guys are fairly decent, but again, they are a unit that very much builds up and has to attack to really kick off that build up. So I'll probably do the video like after we've EZA'd, but prepare for the absolute disaster that will be these guys versus Fusion Zamasu, because they got type disadvantage. The AoE will absolutely shred them to pieces in the first turn. Now the other stages where you don't have the AoE, they will have a little bit of a chance to build up, but they still take some time to build up. If I remember from, obviously I've only seen like the showcases from JP because they're not on Global yet. So new content that has just come out for the worldwide celebration, this EZA is now going to come out on Global this week, and they're not going to be super good in a load of those stages, right? Most of the stages, in fact, which is kind of disappointing, right? And then JP, we got the LR Baby, not that long ago. I think, is it part of the Tanabata? I think it is, right? So this will be coming up on Global either late November, early December. Baby, from what I could tell from what people were saying, it's kind of like an overall thumbs up. Definitely not like super insanely powerful, but I think he was pretty well received, so that is good. And then we have the Transforming Vegeta and the Super Vegeta, which I believe come as part of the Trunks celebration. Transforming Vegeta has some okay things about him, but I've not really heard anyone sort of like raving about him. He can be interesting for sure, but you know, he's not like these big ticket Dokkan. Like this guy was a Saiyan Day release for 2019. I was very excited when this unit first came out. They kind of improved a little bit over the format that was the transforming Goku and Frieza. I think he was definitely better than both of them. But yeah, nothing too crazy. And then this guy is just another one of those units that is very much locked behind certain content, which again for global, bearing in mind this is going to be an upcoming EZA, there's what, the Cell stage from Dismal Red Zone that he could be pretty good because he's going to get all of his buffs and he has type advantage. But that's essentially it. So the biggest problem in conclusion, because, you know, I don't want this, we pointed out that there were good ones, right? The more good ones in the worldwide than bad, I think, overall. So this isn't supposed to be a big negative, like, you know, crapping on Akatsuki and their ability to make EZAs in general. But the question just is, why do they miss the mark on some of these EZAs? Now, Jiren, you know, very old unit. Where's the Jiren page? There we go. Very old unit. We'll probably get a new Jiren sooner rather than later. So you could argue that the EZA didn't need to be amazing. But at the same time, like, why even do it if it's just not going to be good, right? And that's the weird thing about the whole situation, right? EZAs should be designed that when they release, the content that is now out in the game at that point, they can at least do well in. They don't have to be amazing. They don't have to be the best unit on the team. But like, would you run this guy in any of the Dismal Future Red Zone stages? Probably not, right? It's just a very weird situation. I don't understand how they design these EZAs. You would assume that they test them, but I mean, I know it's like a big meme, but like, do they test the units? I don't know. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think their thought process is when it comes to these EZAs? Do you think for some of these units, like maybe they know there's a new Jiren coming out soon, so they just really didn't care to put effort into it? Maybe we know, like maybe there is going to be a new like base form Goku Black coming out sometime soon, so maybe they didn't put a ton of effort into this guy's EZA because of that. Like obviously we don't know those things now, but it still seems like a weird choice. Like, just give him a good EZA, and then when a new summonable Goku Black comes out, who you would assume is going to be good, people are not going to not summon for him just because this guy got a good EZA. So I don't think it's that, but I really don't know. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What do you think Dokkan really needs to do or really needs to think about when it comes to future EZAs? I'd be interested to know what you guys think down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.